She disappeared 7 months ago, leaving behind a wedding ring and a note that shattered him. When Min-sun collides with a heavily pregnant woman on a rain-soaked New York street, recognition strikes like a blade to the chest. Clara, the wife who vanished without a trace. But the timeline doesn't lie, and the child she's carrying unravels every truth he thought he knew. This is a story about the secrets that hunt us, the manipulations that cage us, and the love that refuses to break even when the world conspires against it. Hello, fam. Welcome back to Afro-Korean Heartbeat Stories. If you're ready for a dark mafia romance packed with jaw-dropping plot twists that'll keep you glued to the screen, hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment telling us, are you Team Trust No One or Team Love Conquers All? Plus, let us know what city you're watching from. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's dive in. The collision happened in a breath. One moment, Clara Jones was weaving through the rain-slicked crowd of Times Square, her hand pressed protectively against the weight of her 8-month belly, her thin coat doing almost nothing against the November cold. The next, she'd slammed into something immovable, warm, solid, and devastatingly familiar. Her small tote bag hit the wet pavement, scattering crumpled receipts, loose coins, and the fragments of a life she'd been desperately hiding. I'm so sorry. I wasn't. The words died in her throat. The scent reached her first. Sandalwood, tobacco, and something darker. Power, danger, the kind of cologne that lingered in silk sheets and shadowed penthouses. Her pulse stuttered. She knew before she looked up. Her gaze traveled slowly, unwillingly, from the Italian leather shoes that gleamed even in the rain, up the tailored charcoal suit that fit like a second skin, past the black wool coat draped over broad shoulders, to the tattooed hand that had reached out to steady her, and then, finally, to his face. Min-sun stood frozen on the crowded sidewalk, his dark eyes blown wide with something that looked like devastation. 7 months had carved him into something sharper, something colder. His jet-black hair was longer now, slicked back from a face that had lost every trace of softness. There were new lines around his mouth, shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate searches. He looked like a man who'd been hunting ghosts, and he'd just found one, Clara. Her name fell from his lips like a prayer, like a curse, wrapped in the rough edges of his Korean accent. The sound of it sent ice down her spine. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't run. For 7 months, she'd rehearsed this moment in her mind. What she'd say, where she'd go, how she'd disappear again before he could trap her. But every plan, every backup route, every carefully constructed lie evaporated under the weight of his stare. Then his eyes dropped. The world stopped. There, unmistakable beneath her damp red dress, was the swell of life, the curve of a child, his child. Min-sun's face drained of color. His hand, still gripping her shoulder, tightened instinctively, his fingers trembling against the fabric. Wait. His voice cracked, raw and disbelieving. You're pregnant? Clara's breath hitched. The rain fell harder now, blurring the neon lights around them into smears of red and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a taxi honked. People rushed past, umbrellas colliding, but in this moment, they were utterly alone. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she'd fled because she thought he wanted her dead, that she'd been living in a Brooklyn studio apartment with secondhand furniture and a job translating Korean legal documents just to survive, that she'd been terrified every single day that his world would find her and swallow her whole. But the look on his face stopped her cold, because Min-sun wasn't angry. He was shattered. And Clara realized, in that terrible, beautiful moment, that everything she thought she knew about the night she disappeared might have been a lie. The rain had turned from drizzle to downpour, but neither of them moved. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs so violently she was certain Min-sun could hear it. His hand still gripped her shoulder, not painfully, but with the kind of possession that made escape impossible. Don't, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. Her own hands moved instinctively to cradle her belly, a protective barrier between her child and the man who once owned every corner of her world. Don't touch me, Min-sunday, just let me go. Let you go? His laugh was hollow, bitter, the sound of something breaking underwater. You vanished for 7 months, Clara. 7 months. I searched every hospital, every morgue, every godforsaken corner of this city thinking you were dead, thinking someone had taken you from me. And now you're asking me to just let you walk away? You wanted me gone. The words erupted from her throat before she could stop them. I heard you that night. I heard everything you said to your captains, about eliminating loose ends, about cleaning house, about how liabilities needed to be. What are you talking about? Min Sun's face twisted with confusion, his grip tightening fractionally. What meeting? Clara's breath came in short, sharp gasps. The memory of that night was seared into her brain like a brand. The night before I left, you were in your office with Han and the others. I came home early from dinner with my sister. I heard you through the door. Recognition flickered across Min Sun's features, followed immediately by something darker. His jaw clenched. What exactly did you hear? You said... Her voice cracked. You said there was a leak in the organization. That someone close to you was feeding information to outsiders. That you couldn't have anyone around you that you couldn't trust completely. And then Han said... She swallowed hard, the words tasting like poison. Han said that sometimes the people we love are the ones who betray us deepest. And you agreed. Min Sun's face went deathly pale. For a moment, he looked as though she'd physically struck him. Then his eyes hardened into black diamonds, cold and calculating. And you thought I was talking about you. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I left my corporate law firm for you, Clara said, her voice breaking. I walked away from my career, my friends, everyone who warned me about getting involved with a man like you, and then I hear you discussing eliminating people you can't trust? What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to trust me. Min Sun's voice rose, drawing glances from passing pedestrians. He immediately lowered it, but the intensity remained, coiled and dangerous. You were supposed to come to me, to ask me. Not run like I was some monster who would hurt you. Your cousin told me to run. The words hung between them like a detonated bomb. Min Sun went absolutely still. Even the rain seemed to pause. What did you just say? Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. The next morning, you left early for the docks. Han came to the penthouse. He said he knew I'd overheard the meeting. He said you'd tasked him with handling the situation quietly, but that he cared about me too much to follow through with your orders. He gave me cash, a burner phone, and told me I had 6 hours before your men would come looking. He said if I loved you, I'd disappear and never look back. That it was the only way to keep you from having to make an impossible choice. Min Sun released her so abruptly she stumbled. He took 3 steps back, his hands moving to his hair, gripping it as though he might tear it from his skull. When he looked at her again, there was murder in his eyes. Not directed at her. That son of a... He bit off the curse, his entire body vibrating with barely contained rage. Clara, listen to me very carefully. That meeting wasn't about you. It was about a mole in my shipping operation who'd been selling manifests to the Yakuza. We'd narrowed it down to 3 suspects. All men. All captains I'd known for years. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. But Han said, Han wanted me distracted. Min Sun continued, his voice dropping to something lethal and quiet. He wanted me focused on external threats while he consolidated power from within. And what better way to cripple me than to make me lose the only person I... He stopped, his jaw working. He played us both. No, Clara shook her head, even as the pieces began clicking into place with sickening clarity. No, that doesn't make sense. Why would he help me escape if... Because you leaving destroyed me, Min Sun said flatly. I stopped attending meetings. Stopped overseeing operations. I spent every waking hour hunting for you, throwing money at private investigators, threatening anyone who might know where you'd gone. I was so consumed with finding you that I didn't notice Han systematically taking over my territories, my contacts, my accounts. The rain plastered Clara's curls to her face, but she barely felt it. You're saying he manipulated me into leaving so you'd fall apart? I'm saying he's been planning a coup for months, and you were the perfect catalyst. Min Sun took a step toward her, his eyes blazing. But he made one critical mistake. He underestimated what I'd do if I ever found you again. A car horn blared nearby. People rushed past them, umbrellas colliding. The city moved around them in a blur of light and sound, but Clara felt frozen in place. I don't believe you. Then believe this. Min Sun pulled out his phone, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. He turned it toward her. These are time-stamped security logs from my office building. Look at the date. Clara squinted at the screen. Her blood turned to ice. The meeting she'd overheard, the one that had sent her fleeing into the night, had taken place on March 15th. But according to these logs, Min Sun hadn't been in his office that night. He'd been at a charity gala across town. There were photos, timestamps. Proof. That's impossible, she breathed. I heard your voice. I heard you talking through the door. You heard a recording, Min Sun said coldly. Han had been collecting audio of me for months, splicing together sentences, creating conversations that never happened. He knew you'd come home that night. He knew you'd hear it. He staged the entire thing. Clara's knees buckled. Min Sun caught her before she hit the pavement, his arms wrapping around her with a gentleness that contradicted the fury radiating from every line of his body. Easy, he murmured, his lips close to her temple. Breathe. But she couldn't breathe, because if what he was saying was true, then everything, the fear, the hiding, the 7 months of looking over her shoulder, had been based on a lie. A carefully constructed, deliberately cruel lie. He told me you'd moved on, Clara whispered against Min Sun's chest. 2 months after I left, he sent me a text from an unknown number. Said you'd been seen with someone else. That you were relieved I was gone. That I'd been a distraction you couldn't afford. Min Sun's arms tightened around her. I haven't touched another woman since the day I met you. Something in his voice made her believe him. And that terrified her more than anything else. Because if Han had lied about everything, then she'd run from the one person who might have actually protected her. She'd carried this child alone, worked herself to exhaustion, lived in fear of shadows, all because a trusted ally had whispered poison in her ear. Why? The question came out broken. Why would he do this? Because power makes men do monstrous things, Min Sun said quietly, and because he knew the fastest way to break me was to take away the only thing I loved more than the Empire. The word loved hung in the rain-soaked air between them, fragile and dangerous. Clara pulled back slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. I need proof, more than logs and theories. If you're telling the truth, then I need to see it, all of it. A slow, predatory smile curved Min Sun's lips. It wasn't a kind expression. It was the smile of a man who'd been waiting for permission to unleash hell. Then come with me, he said. Let me show you exactly what your disappearance cost us both. And then, Clara. His hand moved to her belly, hovering just above the swell of their child. Not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his palm through the thin fabric of her dress. Then we're going to make Han wish he'd never learned my name. Min Sun's car was exactly what Clara remembered. Sleek, black, and utterly silent. The kind of vehicle that screamed wealth and danger in equal measure. His driver appeared from nowhere, an umbrella materializing over Clara's head before she could protest. She was ushered into the back seat with the efficiency of a military operation. Min Sun slid in beside her, the door closing with a soft, final click. The sudden quiet was deafening. Rain drummed against the tinted windows, turning the outside world into abstract shapes of light and shadow. Inside the car, the air was thick with tension and the scent of expensive leather. And that cologne, that damned sandalwood and tobacco that used to cling to her skin after nights spent tangled in his sheets. Clara pressed herself against the opposite door, maintaining as much distance as the confined space would allow. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, Min Sun replied, his tone neutral. But there was nothing neutral about the way his eyes tracked her every movement, the way his body angled toward hers like a compass finding north. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting until we're not sitting in the middle of Times Square where anyone could be watching. He leaned forward slightly, speaking to the driver in rapid Korean. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. Clara's hands tightened on her belly. I don't trust you. I know. Min Sun's gaze dropped to where her fingers splayed protectively over their child. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the ice, revealing the molten fury beneath. But you trusted Han. And look where that got you. The words stung because they were true. Clara turned her face to the window, watching the city blur past. You can't blame me for running. Not when everything I heard that night was a carefully orchestrated lie designed to destroy us both, Min Sun finished. I don't blame you for running, Clara. I blame myself for not making you feel safe enough to stay. For not realizing someone in my inner circle was capable of this level of betrayal. His voice was quiet, but there was a rawness to it that made Clara's throat tighten. She risked a glance at him. In the dim light of the car, Min Sun looked exhausted. The sharp lines of his face were deeper than she remembered, his eyes shadowed with sleepless nights and desperate searches. You really looked for me, she said softly. It wasn't a question. Every single day. Min Sun's jaw clenched. I hired 12 different private investigators, offered a reward that would make most men retire comfortably. I personally reviewed footage from every camera in a 50-mile radius of our building. I interrogated anyone who'd ever spoken to you, worked with you, passed you on the street. Clara swallowed hard. Han told me you'd given up after the first month. Han told you a lot of things. Min Sun's hand moved, seemingly of its own accord, reaching across the space between them. His fingers hovered near hers, not quite touching. May I? The question surprised her. The old Min Sun, the one she'd married in a whirlwind courthouse ceremony 2 years ago, had never asked permission. He'd taken, claimed, possessed. This version, this man who looked at her like she might shatter at any moment, was unfamiliar territory. Slowly, carefully, Clara nodded. Min Sun's hand settled over hers where it rested on her belly. His palm was warm, his touch impossibly gentle. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Clara felt it, the sharp, unmistakable kick of their son against Min Sun's hand. The effect was instantaneous. Min Sun's breath caught. His eyes went wide, the carefully constructed mask slipping entirely. Is that your son? Clara whispered. He's active at night, keeps me up constantly. Min Sun's thumb traced a slow circle on her belly, and the baby kicked again, as though responding to his father's presence. Clara watched emotions flicker across Min Sun's face too quickly to name. Wonder, grief, rage, love, all of it raw and unguarded. I missed this, he said hoarsely. I missed all of it. 7 months of you carrying him, feeling him grow, knowing he's alive and real, and his voice broke. Han stole that from me, from us. The fury in those last words was volcanic. It made Clara's pulse spike with something that wasn't entirely fear. Because she'd forgotten this about Min Sun, the intensity of his love was matched only by the absoluteness of his vengeance. He didn't just care, he consumed. And right now, with his hand on her belly and murder in his eyes, Clara realized the most dangerous man in New York wasn't the Mafia boss who ruled through fear. It was the father who'd just discovered someone had tried to steal his family. The car turned down a narrow street, slowing in front of a building Clara didn't recognize. It was elegant in that old money way, all Art Deco facades and brass fixtures, but clearly secured. Cameras at every entrance. A doorman who moved like ex-military. This isn't the penthouse, Clara said warily. No, Min Sun agreed. That place is compromised. Han knows every entrance, every camera, every blind spot. I bought this building 3 months ago under a shell corporation. No one knows I own it. No one except my head of security, who I trust with my life. He helped her out of the car with that same careful gentleness, his hand at the small of her back as they moved through the lobby. Clara was acutely aware of his proximity, the heat of his body so close to hers. The doorman nodded respectfully but didn't speak. They were in an elevator before Clara could fully process where they were going. The doors closed, sealing them in. Min Sun hit the button for the penthouse level, then turned to face her fully. In the confined space, he was overwhelming. All sharp suits and sharper edges, the tattoo on his neck visible above his collar. That phoenix, the one that matched the smaller version Clara had gotten on her ribcage during their honeymoon in Jeju Island. I need you to understand something, Min Sun said, his voice low and deliberate. When we get upstairs, I'm going to show you evidence that will make you want to tear Han apart with your bare hands. Financial records, text messages, recorded conversations, all of it proving he's been systematically dismantling everything I built while feeding us both lies. Clara's breath hitched. Why are you telling me this? Because I need to know that when you see it, when you realize the full scope of what he's done, you won't run again. His eyes burned into hers. I need to know you'll stay long enough for me to fix this. To protect you and our son. To make Han pay for every moment of fear he put you through. The elevator chimed softly, announcing their arrival. But neither of them moved. You're asking me to trust you, Clara said slowly, after everything. I'm asking you to let me prove I'm worth trusting. Min Sun's hand came up, his fingers grazing her cheek with devastating tenderness. I'm asking you to give me a chance to be the father our son deserves, the husband I should have been from the beginning. Clara's eyes stung. She wanted to say yes, wanted to believe this could somehow work. But the fear Han had planted in her heart had roots that ran deep. And if I can't, she whispered. Min Sun's expression went carefully blank. Then I'll set you up somewhere safe, somewhere Han will never find you. I'll provide everything you need for the baby. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're protected, even if it has to be from a distance. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a hallway lined with art that probably cost more than Clara had made in the past 7 months combined. Min Sun stepped back, giving her space, giving her a choice. Clara thought about the tiny Brooklyn apartment with its leaking faucet and thin walls. Thought about the sleepless nights, the constant fear, the bone-deep exhaustion of carrying a child alone. Thought about all the times she'd placed her hand on her belly and whispered to their son about the father he'd never meet. She thought about Han's face when he'd handed her that cash and told her to run, the concern that had seemed so genuine, the betrayal that cut deeper now than it had 7 months ago. And she thought about the way Min Sun's hand had trembled when he felt their baby kick. "Show me," Clara said quietly, stepping out of the elevator. "Show me everything." Min Sun's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. With pleasure. The penthouse was nothing like their old place. That had been all glass and chrome, a monument to Min Sun's success, cold and impersonal. This space was different. Warm woods, soft lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city without making Clara feel exposed. There were books on the shelves, art that looked chosen rather than purchased by a decorator, a kitchen that seemed designed for actual cooking rather than just display. It looked like a home, and that terrified her more than any cage ever could. "Sit," Min Sun said, gesturing to a plush couch. "You look exhausted." Clara was, but she didn't want to admit it. Didn't want to show weakness. Still, her feet ached, her back throbbed, and the baby was pressing insistently on her bladder. She lowered herself carefully onto the cushions, trying to maintain some dignity. Min Sun disappeared into another room, returning moments later with a laptop and a thick manila folder. He set both on the coffee table, then crouched in front of her so they were eye level. "Before I show you this, I need to know. Are you okay? Do you need water? Food? The bathroom is through that door if you need it." The consideration in his tone made Clara's chest ache. "I'm fine." Liar. But there was affection in the accusation. Min Sun stood, moving to the kitchen. He returned with a glass of water and a plate of sliced fruit. Melon, strawberries, grapes. "Eat. Then we'll talk." Clara wanted to protest, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. She picked up a strawberry, biting into it self-consciously. Min Sun watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "What?" she asked around the fruit. "I'm just remembering." His voice went soft. "You used to steal strawberries from my plate at breakfast. Said they tasted better when they were stolen." The memory hit Clara like a physical blow. Sunday mornings in their old penthouse. Min Sun reading the newspaper in Korean while she pretended to work on legal briefs. The easy intimacy of shared space and stolen fruit. The way he'd pull her into his lap, kissing strawberry juice from her lips. "That was a different life," Clara said quietly. "It doesn't have to be." Min Sun opened the laptop, his expression shifting from tender to coldly professional. "Look at this." The screen displayed a spreadsheet, rows and columns of numbers that meant nothing to Clara at first glance. But as Min Sun began explaining, the horror of it crystallized. "These are wire transfers from my accounts," he said, pointing to highlighted cells. Small amounts at first, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, enough to look like operational expenses. But over the past 18 months, Han has siphoned off close to $15 million. Clara's hand froze halfway to another strawberry. 15 million? He's been moving it through shell companies, laundering it, preparing to disappear once he'd consolidated enough power to take over my operations entirely. Min Sun pulled up another document. But that's not the worst part. Look at the dates of the largest transfers. Clara leaned forward, scanning the screen. Her blood went cold. "These are all from the week after I left." "Exactly." Min Sun's jaw clenched. "When I was most vulnerable, most distracted. He struck while I was tearing the city apart looking for you. He used my grief as a weapon." Clara felt sick. The fruit she'd just eaten sat like stones in her stomach. "Show me the rest." Min Sun pulled up a series of text messages. The number was listed as unknown, but the content made Clara's vision blur with rage. It was the text she'd received 2 months after running, the one claiming Min Sun had moved on, that he was relieved she was gone. "We traced this back to a burner phone," Min Sun explained. "Purchased with cash at a convenience store 3 blocks from Han's apartment. The store cameras caught him buying it." He clicked to another file. Security footage. Grainy but unmistakable. Han entering the store, leaving with a small bag. The timestamp matched perfectly. "He wanted me to give up," Clara breathed. "Wanted me to stop hoping you'd find me. So I'd never try to come back." And it worked. There was no accusation in Min Sun's tone, only grim acknowledgement. "You vanished so completely, even my best investigators couldn't find you. You changed your name, paid in cash, stayed off social media, You did everything right to stay hidden. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting down nausea. I was working as a freelance translator, using my maiden name, living in a studio apartment in Sunset Park with a retired nurse named Miss Betty next door who thought I was a widow. A widow. Min Sun's laugh was bitter. In a way, Han tried to make that true. For both of us. He pulled up more files, recorded phone conversations. Han talking to other members of Min Sun's organization, carefully planting seeds of doubt about Clara's loyalty, suggesting she'd been seen talking to men in suits, implying federal agents, creating a narrative where Clara was the threat and her disappearance was convenient rather than devastating. He told your captains I ordered him to make me forget about you, Min Sun said, his voice deadly quiet, that I'd said finding you would be a sign of weakness, that a leader couldn't afford to grieve, so they stopped looking on my orders. Orders I never actually gave. Clara's hands were shaking. 7 months. 7 months of believing she'd barely escaped with her life. 7 months of sleeping with one eye open, jumping at every Korean man she passed on the street, clutching her growing belly, and whispering apologies to her son for bringing him into a world where his father wanted him dead. All lies. Carefully constructed, meticulously executed lies. I'm going to kill him, Clara whispered. Min Sun's head snapped up. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then slowly, deliberately, he smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Clara had ever seen on his face. No, he said softly. You're going to help me destroy him. Legally, financially, socially. I'm going to strip away everything he's built on the foundation of our pain. And he's going to know, every step of the way, that it was you and me together who ended him. Clara met his eyes. In that moment, she wasn't the frightened woman who'd run into the night. She was the corporate lawyer who'd once made grown men cry in depositions. The woman who'd graduated top of her class at Columbia Law. The woman who'd fallen in love with a dangerous man and learned to navigate his world. Tell me the plan, she said. Min Sun's smile widened. He reached out, tucking a damp curl behind her ear. First, we let Han think he's winning. We let him believe I'm too distracted by finding you to notice his final play. He's planning to call a meeting of the elders next week, a formal challenge to my leadership. He has evidence prepared. Falsified documents showing financial mismanagement, failed operations, even fabricated proof that I've been compromised by federal investigations. Can he actually take over? If enough elders vote against me, yes, the organization has rules, traditions. If I'm deemed unfit to lead, I can be removed, forcibly if necessary. Min Sun's hand moved to her belly again, that possessive gesture that sent heat curling through Clara's veins despite everything. But Han doesn't know I've spent the last 3 months building my own case against him. He doesn't know I've been working with a forensic accountant who's untangled every thread of his embezzlement. And he definitely doesn't know I've found you. Clara's mind raced, falling back into the analytical patterns of her lawyer days. He'll have people watching you. If I'm seen with you before the meeting, then he'll panic and accelerate his timeline. Exactly. Min Sun pulled out his phone, pulling up a photo. Which is why you're not going to be seen with me. You're going to be seen with him. The photo showed a restaurant. Upscale, intimate. The kind of place Han favored for business dinners. Clara's stomach turned. You want me to meet with him? I want you to destroy him from the inside. Min Sun's eyes glittered with cold calculation. Call him. Tell him you heard he's been handling family business in my absence. Tell him you need money, that you're scared, that the baby's coming soon and you don't know what to do. Play on his ego, make him think he's won. That he successfully drove us apart, and now you're coming to him for help. It was brilliant. Ruthless and brilliant. He'll record the conversation. Try to use it against you. Let him. Min Sun's smile turned predatory. Because what he won't know is that you'll be recording him too. Every word, every admission, every piece of evidence that proves he orchestrated this entire scheme. And when the elders meet next week, we'll play those recordings for everyone to hear. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. It was dangerous. If Han suspected anything, if he realized she was working with Min Sun, he might panic, might do something desperate. But the alternative was living in fear forever, always looking over her shoulder, raising their son in the shadow of a threat that would never go away. I'll need a wire, she said finally. Something he won't detect, already arranged. My head of security has equipment that could fool a federal sweep. Min Sun stood, extending his hand to her. But first, you need rest. The guest room is through here. Everything you need is already there. Clothes, toiletries, food in the mini fridge. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer. Clara took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. She was close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to count the individual lashes framing his dark eyes. The air between them felt charged, dangerous, heavy with 7 months of absence and the weight of everything they'd lost. "Min-sun," she whispered. "Clara." His hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "I know you don't trust me yet. I know I have to earn that back. But I need you to understand something. Whatever happens with Han, whatever we do to take him down, it's not about revenge. It's about making sure you and our son are safe. That's the only thing that matters to me now." Clara's throat tightened. "You gave up your empire, your power. All of it. It was never mine," Min-sun said softly. "Not really. I inherited a legacy I didn't ask for, and built it into something that nearly cost me everything that actually matters. If burning it all down is what keeps you safe, I'll light the match myself." Before Clara could respond, before she could process the enormity of what he'd just offered, Min-sun leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. The kiss was chaste, tender, utterly at odds with the dangerous man he'd been just moments before. "Sleep," he murmured against her skin. "Tomorrow, we start the hunt. Tonight, you rest." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. She let Min-sun guide her to a bedroom that was somehow both luxurious and comfortable, clearly prepared with her in mind. As the door closed behind her, Clara sank onto the bed, her mind spinning. She'd thought running had saved her. But maybe, just maybe, running had been the biggest mistake of her life. And now, standing in the eye of a storm she hadn't even known was brewing, Clara realized something terrifying. She was about to walk back into the fire, willingly, to save them both. Morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Clara woke to sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains, her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with pregnancy and everything to do with the tension of the previous night. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back in waves. The collision, the revelation, Min-sun's hands on her belly, the evidence of Han's betrayal. She forced herself out of bed, moving to the attached bathroom. It was stocked with everything she might need: expensive shampoo, soft towels, even prenatal vitamins in the medicine cabinet. Min-sun had thought of everything. That precision, that attention to detail, was both comforting and unnerving. Clara showered quickly, then examined the clothes laid out on a chair, maternity wear, all in her size, tasteful and comfortable. She dressed slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she pulled on soft leggings and an oversized sweater that somehow made her feel less vulnerable. When she emerged, the apartment was filled with the scent of coffee and something richer: bacon, eggs, toast. Her stomach growled traitorously. Clara followed her nose to the kitchen, where Min-sun stood at the stove, cooking. He'd changed from his suit to dark jeans and a black t-shirt that showcased the muscular lines of his back, the hints of tattoos curling around his biceps. His hair was damp, pushed back from his face. He looked younger like this, almost like the man she'd married before the weight of his world had settled on both their shoulders. "You cook now?" Clara asked, surprising herself with how normal the question sounded. Min-sun glanced over his shoulder, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I learned after you left. Cooking kept me sane when everything else felt like it was falling apart." "Sit. I made kimchi eggs and bacon, the way you used to like it." Clara settled onto a bar stool, watching as he plated the food with surprising care. He set it in front of her along with a glass of orange juice and decaf coffee. "The coffee is safe for the baby," I checked. The consideration made her chest tight. "Thank you." They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that spoke of old familiarity trying to resurface. Clara found herself relaxing despite everything, the food warm and grounding. Min-sun ate mechanically, his mind clearly elsewhere, calculating and planning. Finally, Clara set down her fork. "When do we do this?" Min-sun checked his watch. Han usually has lunch at Il Corso around 1. He likes the back corner table where he can see the entire restaurant. "We'll call him in an hour, set up a meeting for this afternoon. The sooner we move, the less time he has to suspect anything." Clara's pulse quickened. "And the wire? My security chief is on his way. He'll fit you with a device that looks like a fitness tracker, heart rate monitor for pregnant women. Completely undetectable unless Han physically removes it from your wrist, which he won't do. It'll record everything and transmit directly to me in real time." The clinical efficiency of it helped settle Clara's nerves. This was like preparing for a deposition. She could do this. She'd face down hostile witnesses, navigated complex negotiations, stared down men twice her size across conference tables. Han was just another opponent, except he'd stolen 7 months of her life, had made her believe the father of her child wanted her dead, had weaponized her fear and Min Sun's grief for his own gain. "I need to know something," Clara said quietly. "If this goes wrong, if Han figures out what I'm doing, will you protect me?" Min Sun set down his coffee with deliberate care. When he looked at her, his eyes were absolutely serious. "Clara, if Han so much as looks at you wrong, I will end him. Not legally, not through some careful plan. I will personally make sure he never threatens you again. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Clara did. And the dark part of her that had been born in 7 months of fear and fury found comfort in that promise. "I understand." "Good." Min Sun stood, coming around the counter. He took her hands, his thumbs tracing circles on her wrists. "I'm going to be listening to every word. The moment I think you're in danger, I'm coming in. To hell with the plan. And if I can get the confession, then Han's finished. And we can finally start living without looking over our shoulders." A knock at the door interrupted them. Min Sun answered it, admitting a compact man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. He moved with military precision, carrying a sleek metal case. "Mrs. Sun," he said respectfully, inclining his head. "I'm Kang. I handle security for Mr. Sunday. I understand we're fitting you with surveillance equipment today." Clara nodded, extending her wrist. Kang worked quickly and efficiently, securing what looked exactly like a prenatal heart monitor around her left wrist. He showed her the buttons, one for heart rate display, one that secretly activated the microphone, one that sent a panic signal directly to Min Sun. "It'll pick up audio in a 15-foot radius," Kang explained. "Crystal clear. If he takes you somewhere private, even better. Just remember, keep your wrist visible. Don't let him see you fidget with it. Act natural." "I can do that," Clara said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Min Sun walked Kang out, then returned with a burner phone. "Use this to call Han. It's clean, untraceable if he tries to track it later. Tell him you're scared, that you heard I'm looking for you, that you need money to disappear somewhere I can't find you. Appeal to his ego. Let him think he's the hero saving you from the monster he made me out to be." Clara took the phone, her fingers closing around it. This was it, the point of no return. Once she made this call, she'd be committed to a dangerous game of manipulation and lies. She'd be walking back into the world she'd fled, deliberately putting herself in reach of a man who'd orchestrated her exile. But she'd also be taking back her power, taking control of the narrative, and maybe, just maybe, building something real from the ashes of Han's deception. She dialed the number Min Sun provided. It rang twice before Han's smooth voice answered. "Yes?" Clara let her voice shake, let fear bleed through. "Han, it's Clara." The pause on the other end was electric. "Clara? Where are you? Are you safe?" "I don't know," she whispered, pitching her voice perfectly, scared, desperate, just on the edge of breaking. "I heard Min Sun's been looking for me. I heard he hired investigators, that he's offering money for information. Han, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. The baby's coming soon and I can't keep running and—" "Slow down," Han said, his voice dropping into that concerned, protective tone she remembered so well. The tone she now recognized as calculated manipulation. "Take a breath. Tell me where you are." "I can't. Not over the phone. But I need help. I need money to disappear somewhere he can't find me." "You were right, Han. You were right about everything. I should have listened when you told me to go further, to leave the country. But I didn't have enough money, and now I'm trapped and— Clara, listen to me." Han's voice was silk over steel. "I can help you. I have resources, connections. I can get you somewhere safe, set you up with a new identity, make sure you and the baby are protected. But I need to see you in person. Can you meet me this afternoon?" Clara met Min Sun's eyes across the kitchen. He nodded once, his expression carved from ice. "Il Corso?" Clara asked, her voice small. "The restaurant you used to take Min Sun to?" "Perfect," Han said, and she could hear the smile in his voice, the satisfaction. He thought he'd won. 2:00. Come to the back entrance. I'll make sure you're not seen." "Thank you," Clara breathed. "Han, I don't know what I would have done if—" "You don't have to thank me," Han interrupted. "I told you I'd protect you. That hasn't changed. See you at 2. The line went dead. Clara lowered the phone slowly, her heart hammering. Min Sun was at her side in an instant, his hands on her shoulders, grounding her. You were perfect, he murmured. Absolutely perfect. He bought every word. He thinks I'm helpless, Clara said, and there was steel beneath the tremor in her voice. He thinks I'm just a scared woman with nowhere else to turn. He has no idea what's coming. Min Sun's smile was razor sharp. Then, let's make sure he never sees it coming. The back entrance of Il Corso was exactly as Clara remembered. Discreet, elegant, designed for people who preferred not to be seen. She stood in the narrow alley behind the restaurant, her hand pressed against her belly, feeling the rapid flutter of her son's movements. He was restless today, as though sensing his mother's fear. Min Sun's voice crackled softly in the nearly invisible earpiece Kang had fitted her with. I'm 2 blocks away. Kang has eyes on every exit. You're not alone, Clara. Remember that. Clara touched the monitor on her wrist, activating the recording function. The small red light blinked once, then disappeared. She took a breath, steadying herself, then knocked. The door opened immediately. Han stood there, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Clara's Brooklyn rent had been. His face was carefully arranged into concern, but Clara saw what she'd missed 7 months ago. The calculation in his eyes, the predatory satisfaction poorly disguised as worry. Clara, he breathed, stepping aside to let her in. Thank God you're safe. She let herself tremble as she entered, playing the role of the frightened woman perfectly. Han's hand settled on her lower back, guiding her through the narrow hallway toward a private dining room. His touch made her skin crawl, but she forced herself not to flinch. The room was intimate, candlelit, despite the afternoon hour. A single table was set with wine, red, expensive, completely inappropriate for a pregnant woman. Han either didn't know or didn't care. Sit, please, Han said, pulling out a chair. You look exhausted. Have you been taking care of yourself? Clara lowered herself into the seat, making sure her wrist with its monitor was visible on the table. As well as I can. It's not easy, Han, living like this. Always looking over my shoulder, wondering if Min Sun's investigators will find me. Han poured himself wine, his movements smooth and practiced. I'm sorry you've had to endure this. If I'd known you were struggling, I would have reached out sooner. I couldn't risk it, Clara said, letting her voice break slightly. I was terrified he'd trace any communication back to you, that he'd hurt you for helping me. Something flickered across Han's face, triumph, quickly masked. Min Sun has become unstable since you left. Paranoid. He's been making reckless decisions, alienating allies, bleeding money on fruitless searches. The elders are concerned. Clara's pulse quickened. This was it, the opening she needed. Concerned enough to remove him? Han's smile was slow, dangerous. Perhaps. But that's family business, Clara. Nothing you need to worry about. But I do worry, Clara pressed, leaning forward. The movement made her belly press against the table edge, a visible reminder of her vulnerability. If Min Sun loses power, what happens to me? To our son? If someone else takes over, will they honor the arrangement you made to keep me safe? Han's eyes gleamed. He was enjoying this, Clara realized with cold fury, enjoying playing the hero, the protector, the man who'd outsmarted the great Min Sunday. Our son, Han repeated softly. You're certain it's his? The question was like ice water down Clara's spine. What are you implying? Nothing, Han said quickly, raising his hands in mock surrender. I'm just thinking practically. You left 7 months ago. You're 8 months pregnant. The timeline is tight. Clara's mind raced. Was this part of his plan? To cast doubt on the baby's paternity? To give Min Sun another reason to reject her if she ever returned? He's Min Sun's, Clara said firmly. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks before I ran. I couldn't tell him, not after what I heard. Han leaned back in his chair, studying her. Tell me again, exactly what did you hear that night? Clara recited the story she and Min Sun had prepared, keeping her voice shaky and uncertain. You'd come to the penthouse. You said you needed to warn me, that Min Sun had been having meetings about security leaks, about people who couldn't be trusted. You said he'd specifically mentioned me, that he'd told his captains I was asking too many questions about his business, that I was a liability. And you believed that? Han asked, his tone carefully neutral. You had recordings, Clara said desperately. You played them for me. His voice, talking about loose ends and cleaning house. How could I not believe it? Han's expression shifted, satisfaction bleeding through. Those recordings, yes. I wanted you to understand the danger you were in. Min Sun has become something dark, Clara. Something that would destroy you to protect his empire. I couldn't let that happen. Clara let tears well in her eyes, easy enough when rage burned so hot in her chest. So you helped me escape. You gave me money, a phone, told me how to disappear. You saved my life, Han. I did what any decent man would do, Han said, but there was pride in his voice. Arrogance. I protected someone who couldn't protect themselves. And now? Clara whispered. What happens now? I can't keep running forever. I have a baby coming in a few weeks. I need stability. Safety. But I don't know where to go or who to trust. Han reached across the table, taking her hand. His palm was cool, smooth, the hand of a man who'd never done hard labor. Nothing like Min Sun's rougher grip, the calluses earned from martial arts training and occasionally dirtying his own hands. You can trust me, Han said earnestly. I have a plan. In 2 days, the family elders meet to discuss Min Sun's leadership. I have evidence of his mismanagement, financial records, failed operations, proof that he's been compromised by personal obsessions that have cost the organization millions. Clara's breath caught. You're going to remove him. We're going to remove him, Han corrected. The elders, the captains who've grown tired of his instability. It's not personal, Clara. It's business. And when it's done, when I've taken over as head of the family, I'll make sure you're protected. I'll set you up somewhere beautiful, maybe California, or overseas if you prefer. You and the baby will have everything you need. You'll never have to fear Min Sun again. The trap was closing. Clara could hear it in every word, see it in the way Han's grip tightened on her hand. He didn't want to protect her. He wanted to own her, the ultimate trophy, the proof that he'd beaten Min Sun on every front. He'd take the empire, the power, and the woman, leaving Min Sun with nothing. What do you need from me? Clara asked carefully. Han's smile widened. Just stay hidden for 2 more days. Once the vote is done, once Min Sun is removed, I'll come for you personally. You'll never have to run again. Clara pulled her hand back slowly, cradling it against her belly. And if Min Sun finds me before then? He won't, Han said confidently. His investigators are chasing ghosts. He doesn't know about this restaurant, doesn't know we're in contact. As far as he's concerned, you've vanished completely. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. The arrogance was staggering. Han truly believed he'd won, that he'd manipulated them both so completely that victory was inevitable. Clara stood carefully, making a show of steadying herself against the table. I should go. I can't risk being seen. Han rose as well, moving around the table. He was too close now, invading her space with that false concern painted on his features. How are you getting by? Do you need money now? I have enough for a few more days, Clara lied. After that, Han pulled out his wallet, extracting a thick fold of bills. He pressed them into her hand, his fingers lingering. Take this. Buy yourself something nice. You deserve it after everything you've been through. The money felt dirty in Clara's palm, but she clutched it gratefully, playing her role. Thank you, Han. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. There's no need for repayment, Han said, but his eyes held a different message entirely. Just remember who protected you when Min Sun showed his true colors. Remember who you can really trust. He walked her to the door, one hand possessively on her back. As Clara stepped into the alley, Han caught her wrist, the one with the monitor. Clara's heart stopped. Interesting bracelet, Han said casually, his thumb brushing over the device. I don't remember you wearing fitness trackers before. Clara forced a laugh, light and self-deprecating. My doctor insisted. Something about monitoring the baby's stress levels and my heart rate. Being pregnant is basically one long medical surveillance operation. Han's eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then he smiled, releasing her wrist. Take care of yourself, Clara. I'll be in touch soon. The door closed, leaving Clara alone in the alley. She waited until she heard the lock click before allowing herself to breathe. Her legs trembled, threatening to give out. She'd done it. She'd gotten him to confess on tape. Not everything, but enough. Enough to prove he'd orchestrated her disappearance, that he was planning a coup, that he'd manipulated them both. Min Sun's voice came through her earpiece, rough with barely contained rage. I'm coming to get you. Stay where you are. Clara leaned against the brick wall, one hand pressed to her racing heart, the other cradling her belly. She'd walked into the lion's den and emerged unscathed. But the game was far from over. In 2 days, Han would make his move. And when he did, Min Sun would be ready. They both would be. Min Sun's car appeared at the mouth of the alley within minutes, the black sedan sliding into the narrow space like a predator. The back door opened before Clara could take a step. Min Sun was there, reaching for her, his hands gentle despite the fury radiating from every line of his body. "Get in," he said quietly, but there was violence threaded through his tone. "Now." Clara didn't argue. She let him guide her into the car, his hand at her back, protective and possessive in equal measure. The door closed, sealing them in darkness and leather, and the scent of his cologne mixing with her fear sweat. The car moved before Clara could even reach for her seatbelt. Min Sun did it for her, his movements precise, controlled, betrayed only by the fine tremor in his fingers as they brushed her shoulder. "Did he hurt you?" Min Sun's voice was deadly soft. "No," Clara said quickly. "He didn't touch me, just my hand when he was playing the concerned friend, and my wrist when he noticed the monitor, but I convinced him it was medical." Min Sun's jaw clenched so hard Clara heard his teeth grind. He questioned the baby's paternity. It wasn't a question. He'd heard everything through the wire, every poisonous word Han had spoken. "Yes, he's trying to give me an out," Min Sun said, his laugh bitter and sharp. "A reason to reject you both if you ever came back. Making sure I'd doubt, making sure the damage would be permanent, even if we found each other again." Clara turned to look at him properly in the dim light of the car. Min Sun's face was carved from stone, his eyes black fire, his hands fisted on his thighs like he was physically restraining himself from turning the car around and finishing what they'd started. "He confessed," Clara said, pulling the conversation back to solid ground. "Not everything, but enough. He admitted to the recordings, to helping me escape, to planning the coup. We have him." "We have pieces," Min Sun corrected, "but not enough to convict him in front of the elders. They'll want concrete evidence of the embezzlement, the falsified records, the audio manipulation. What we got today proves he's manipulative, but not that he's a traitor to the family." Clara's stomach sank. "So it wasn't enough. It's a start." Min Sun finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made Clara's breath catch. "You were perfect, Clara. Absolutely perfect. The way you played him made him think he'd won. That was masterful. I'd forgotten how brilliant you are when you're working." The compliment shouldn't have warmed her the way it did. Clara looked away, focusing on the city sliding past the tinted windows. "What happens now?" "Now we go deeper," Min Sun said. "Han thinks he has 2 days before the elders meet, but what he doesn't know is that I moved the meeting up. It's happening tomorrow night." Clara's head whipped around. "Tomorrow?" But he said. He lied. "The meeting was always scheduled for tomorrow. Han wanted you to think you had more time so you'd stay compliant, stay hidden, stay under his control." Min Sun's smile was razor sharp. "But I've been planning this for weeks. I have the forensic evidence ready. I have testimony from the captains Han tried to turn against me. I have bank records, surveillance footage, communication logs, everything we need to prove he's been bleeding the family dry while plotting to take over." "Then why did you need me to meet with him today?" Clara asked slowly. Min Sun's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the calculated exterior. "Because I needed you to hear it from his own mouth. I needed you to understand that none of this was your fault. That you didn't run because you were weak or paranoid or irrational. You ran because a skilled manipulator spent months setting the stage for your exile. And I needed that confession on record, so that when we destroy him tomorrow, you'll know with absolute certainty that justice was served." Clara's throat tightened. "You did this for me. I did this for us," Min Sun corrected. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "For our son. For the life we should have had these past 7 months. For every moment Han stole from us." The car pulled into an underground garage Clara didn't recognize. Private, heavily secured. The kind of place where secrets were kept and plans were made. Min Sun helped her out, his hand lingering at her waist. "Where are we?" "Safe house," Min Sun said. "Different from the penthouse. This is where I've been coordinating everything. The evidence room is here. I want you to see it. Everything I've compiled against Han. You deserve to know the full scope of his betrayal." He led her through a reinforced door, down a hallway lined with security cameras, into a large room that looked like something from a crime thriller. Whiteboards covered with timelines and connections. File boxes stacked against walls. Computer monitors displaying spreadsheets and bank records, and surveillance footage frozen mid-frame. In the center of it all was a table covered with folders. Min Sun moved to it, picking up a thick manila envelope. "This is everything," he said quietly. 18 months of embezzlement, 47 instances of falsified communications, security footage proving he purchased burner phones and hired people to impersonate federal agents, audio files showing the original recordings he used to create those fake conversations you overheard, testimony from 3 different captains admitting Han approached them about supporting a leadership change. Clara moved closer, her eyes scanning the evidence. It was overwhelming, meticulous, comprehensive, damning. How long have you known? I started suspecting 3 months after you left, Min Sun admitted. Small things at first. Money moving in ways that didn't make sense. Captains reporting conversations I knew I'd never had. Han being overly helpful with my search for you, while simultaneously suggesting I was wasting resources. But I couldn't prove anything until I brought in outside investigators. People Han didn't know about, couldn't compromise. Clara picked up one of the folders, flipping through bank statements marked with highlighter. The amounts were staggering. He stole millions. 15.3 million, to be exact, Min Sun said. Enough to fund his own operation once he took over. Enough to buy loyalty from captains who were struggling financially. He was building an empire within my empire, and he used our relationship as the wrecking ball to bring mine down. Clara set the folder down with shaking hands. 7 months. 7 months of thinking she'd escaped a monster, when really she'd been running from a ghost created by someone she'd trusted. 7 months of poverty and fear and loneliness, all while Han had been systematically dismantling the life she and Min Sun had built. I want to be there tomorrow, Clara said quietly. When you present this to the elders, I want to see his face when he realizes we know everything. Min Sun moved closer, his hand cupping her face with devastating tenderness. Clara, these meetings can get violent. If Han feels cornered, then I'll be the reminder of exactly what he tried to destroy, Clara interrupted, her voice steel wrapped in silk. I'll stand there with your child in my belly and show every elder in that room what he did to us. They need to see me, Min Sunday. They need to understand this wasn't just financial betrayal or political maneuvering. This was personal. This was cruel. And I deserve to watch him fall. Something shifted in Min Sun's expression. Pride, desire, a dangerous kind of love that had no place existing in the middle of a war room. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Clara's breath caught at the intimacy of the gesture. You're not the same woman who left 7 months ago, he murmured. No, Clara agreed. I'm not. That woman was naive enough to run without asking questions. This woman knows how to fight. Min Sun's lips curved into a smile that was all darkness and promise. Then let's make Han regret he ever learned your name. The meeting room was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings, mahogany walls, a massive table that could seat 20 but tonight held only 12. The elders of Min Sun's organization, men who'd built empires in shadows and blood. They sat in judgment, their faces carved from years of violence and hard decisions. Clara stood at Min Sun's side, her hand resting on her belly, her head held high. She dressed carefully. A black dress that somehow made her pregnancy look both vulnerable and powerful. Her hair pulled back to show her face clearly. Minimal jewelry, except for the wedding ring she'd retrieved from where Han had convinced her to leave it 7 months ago. The elders stared. Some with curiosity, some with calculation, 1 or 2 with something that might have been sympathy. At the far end of the table, Han sat with manufactured concern etched into his features. When his eyes landed on Clara, she saw the exact moment he realized he'd been played, his face drained of color. His carefully composed mask cracked just enough to show the panic beneath. Gentlemen, Min Sun said, his voice carrying the weight of command. Thank you for attending on such short notice. I know many of you have questions about the state of our organization, about my leadership, about rumors that have been circulating regarding my fitness to continue in my role. Damn right we have questions. One elder, Park, the oldest of them, growled. You've been erratic, Sunna. Obsessed with finding your missing wife while operations suffered. We've lost ground to the Yakuza, missed opportunities in shipping contracts, hemorrhaged money on private investigators who found nothing. Until now, Min Sun said calmly. He gestured to Clara. May I present Clara Sunday, my wife? Very much alive, very much pregnant with my son. Very much the victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by someone in this room. The silence was absolute. Every eye moved to Han, whose face had gone from pale to gray. That's a serious accusation, another elder said carefully. Do you have proof? Min Sun nodded to Kang, who stood by the door. The security chief moved to a laptop, pulling up files on a screen that descended from the ceiling. These are financial records spanning the last 18 months. As you can see, There have been systematic withdrawals from our operational accounts, small enough to avoid immediate detection, but totaling $15.3 million. Numbers flashed on the screen. Transaction after transaction, all traced back to shell companies. The elders leaned forward, their expressions darkening. These shell companies, Kang continued, are registered to various names, but the banking information all leads back to one person. He clicked, and a photograph appeared. Han's face, entering a bank in Queens. Han Park, captured by security cameras making deposits into accounts that then moved money overseas. That proves nothing, Han said, his voice tight. I manage many family accounts. These could be legitimate operational transfers. Could be, Min-sun agreed. Except for this. He nodded again, and audio began to play. Han's voice filled the room, recorded from Clara's meeting just yesterday. The conversation about Min-sun's instability, about the coup, about protecting Clara from a threat he'd invented. As the recording played, Han's confident facade crumbled further. He manipulated my wife into believing I wanted her dead, Min-sun said, his voice deadly quiet. He created false evidence, staged conversations, even went so far as to hire people to impersonate federal agents, all to make Clara run, all to destabilize me emotionally so I would be vulnerable to his takeover attempt. Clara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. He came to me 7 months ago and played recordings of conversations he claimed were about eliminating me. He gave me cash and told me I had hours to disappear before Min-sun's men would come for me. I believed him because he was family, because I trusted him. She paused, letting that sink in. I spent 7 months hiding in poverty, working minimum wage jobs, terrified for my life and my unborn child, all because Han wanted power and saw my relationship with Min-sun as an obstacle to remove. The elders' faces were stone, but Clara saw the calculation in their eyes. This wasn't just about money or power. Han had violated one of their core principles. Family protected family. By targeting Clara, by manipulating her into exile, he'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. These are serious accusations, Park said slowly. Han, what do you say to this? Han stood, his hands spread in appeal. She's lying. This is clearly a performance orchestrated by Min-sun to discredit me because he knows I've been advocating for reform, for... Explain the bank accounts, another elder interrupted coldly. Explain the audio recordings where you confessed to helping her escape, another added. Explain, Min-sun said, his voice dropping to something lethal, how you plan to take over my organization using money you stole from our own operations. Han's composure shattered completely. His eyes darted around the room, looking for allies and finding none. You don't understand. Min-sun was weak. He let a woman compromise his judgment. He was bleeding resources on a pointless search while our enemies, Park interrupted, are in this room. You, Han, you are the enemy. The words fell like a death sentence. Han seemed to realize it too, his face going from desperate to calculating in an instant. Clara saw the shift, the dangerous cornered animal look that meant he was about to do something reckless. Min-sun, she whispered urgently. But Min-sun had already seen it. He moved, placing himself between Clara and Han just as Han lunged toward her. The attack was clumsy, desperate, but the intent was clear. If Han was going down, he'd take Min-sun's heir with him. He never reached her. Kang intercepted first, slamming Han back against the wall with professional efficiency. 2 other security guards appeared from nowhere, restraining Han's arms. He struggled, shouting incoherently about betrayal and weakness and justice. Min-sun didn't move from his position in front of Clara, his body a shield, his hand reaching back to touch her hip, checking, confirming she was safe. Only when he was certain did he turn to face the elders. As you can see, Min-sun said calmly, though his chest rose and fell rapidly, Han has proven himself unfit for any position of trust within this organization. The question now is what we do about it. Park stood slowly, his age showing in the careful way he moved, but his eyes were sharp, ruthless, the eyes of a man who'd survived decades in a brutal world. The evidence is overwhelming. The attempted attack on a pregnant woman, on the air, is unforgivable. Han Park, you are hereby stripped of all rank, all holdings, all protection under family law. Han's struggles intensified. You can't do this. I built half of what we have. You stole, Park said flatly. You manipulated. You endangered the bloodline. You are nothing now. Kang, remove him. Ensure he understands the consequences of ever showing his face in our territories again." Kang nodded, dragging Han toward the door. As he passed Clara, Han spat. "This isn't over. You think you've won, but—" Min Sun moved faster than Clara thought possible. His fist connected with Han's jaw with a crack that echoed through the silent room. Han slumped in Kang's grip, unconscious. "It's over," Min Sun said quietly. "The moment you tried to touch my wife and child, it was over." Kang dragged Han's limp form out. The door closed, leaving weighted silence in its wake. Park turned to Min Sun, his expression unreadable. "You've proven your point. The crisis was manufactured. Your leadership sound. But Suna, this is twice now your family life has nearly destroyed this organization. Once with her disappearance, once with this coup attempt. The elders need assurances this won't happen again." Min Sun's hand found Clara's, threading their fingers together. "You have my assurance, because I'm stepping down." The room erupted in shocked protests. Clara's own gasp was lost in the chaos. She stared at Min Sun's profile, seeing the determination there, the absolute certainty. "I've already begun transitioning leadership to my second limb," Min Sun continued, speaking over the noise. "Legal operations only, fully legitimate. I'll maintain a consulting role, but day-to-day operations will no longer be my concern. My priority is my family, my wife, my son, and ensuring they never have to fear this world again." Park studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "If this is your choice, we'll honor it. You've served well, Suna. You've earned the right to step back." Min Sun bowed his head respectfully. Then he turned to Clara, his eyes searching hers. "Let's go home." 3 weeks later, Clara stood in the nursery of their new apartment. Not the penthouse, not the safe house, but a sun-filled space in a neighborhood where children played and neighbors greeted each other by name. The walls were pale yellow, the furniture assembled by Min Sun's own hands, the mobile above the crib playing soft music. She felt arms wrap around her from behind, Min Sun's hands settling on her belly where their son was due any day now. His chin rested on her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. "Second thoughts?" he murmured. "About which part?" Clara asked, smiling. "The part where we took down your corrupt cousin? The part where you walked away from a criminal empire? Or the part where we're about to become parents? Any of it." Min Sun's hands traced slow circles on her stomach. "All of it." Clara turned in his arms, looking up into the face of the man who'd burned his world down to build a safer one for her. "No second thoughts. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Min Sun's kiss was soft, reverent, full of promises and second chances. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "He's going to be here soon. Our son. And he's going to grow up never knowing what his father used to be. Only who he chose to become. A good man," Clara whispered. "A good father. A good husband. I'm going to spend every day proving I deserve that description." Min Sun's hand moved to her face, cupping her cheek. "I love you, Clara. I never stopped. Not even when I thought I'd lost you forever." "I love you too," Clara said, and meant it with every fiber of her being, now and always. The baby kicked hard, as though in agreement. They both laughed, the sound filling the nursery with warmth and hope, and the promise of a future built on truth rather than lies. 3 days later, Clara went into labor. Min Sun held her hand through every contraction, every push, every moment of pain and fear and overwhelming joy. And when their son finally entered the world, his cry strong and healthy, Min Sun wept openly. They named him Daniel, strong and righteous, a name for a new beginning. As Clara held their baby for the first time, Min Sun's arms around them both, she realized something profound. Sometimes the worst betrayals led to the greatest transformations. Sometimes losing everything meant finding what truly mattered. Sometimes love required burning down the past to build a future worth living. And sometimes, just sometimes, the story that began with a collision on a rainy street ended with a family whole, safe, and finally free. So there you have it, heartbeats. A love forged in deception, tested by betrayal, and ultimately stronger for having survived both. Min Sun and Clara's story proves that sometimes the most dangerous game is the one played for love. Did they make the right choices? Could you forgive someone after 7 months of manipulation? And more importantly, do you believe Han got what he deserved? Or did he deserve worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your theories fuel these stories. If you're watching from Lagos, London, New York, Tokyo, or anywhere else in the world, shout out your city, Let us know where the Afro-Korean Heartbeat Stories family is tuning in from. Now here's the thing, fam. This is just the beginning. Because what happened to Han after Kang dragged him out of that meeting? Where did they take him? And what about the other members of Min Sun's former organization? Do they all accept his departure? Or are there others plotting in the shadows, waiting to strike at the family he's trying to protect? If you want part 2, if you want to see Clara and Min Sun navigate parenthood while old enemies resurface and new threats emerge, you need to let us know right now. Smash that like button if this story had you on the edge of your seat. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And drop part 2 inches the comments if you're ready for the next chapter in this dark romance saga. Because trust me, this story is far from over. See you in the next one, Heartbeats. Stay dangerous, stay in love, and always, always trust your instincts.